Hey, cozy friends and ReaderCrate mystery lovers. I'm Alyssa Granlund. I'm an author and a reader and the founder of ReaderCrate. And I am so excited and thrilled that you are joining us for another festive author chat. Tonight, I'm joined by an absolute star of the cozy mystery world, and that is Ellen Byron. And Ellen is a USA Today bestselling author. She's a recipient of multiple Agatha and Lefty Awards for her Cajun country mysteries, her vintage cookbook mysteries, and her catering hall mysteries as Maria DeRico. She also has a series called the Golden Motel Mysteries. So she's also a two-time Anthony Award winner. So lots of awards for her. She also has written for TV. She's a playwright. Some of the things that she's written on TV, we were just kind of chatting a little bit, is some comedy stuff, Wings, Just Shoot Me, and Fairly Odd Parents, which is the one that really caught my eye because my kids were huge lovers of that Nickelodeon show, which was so fun. And she's written over 200 articles for national magazines. I mean, she has just done so much. It's so impressive. But she said that her most impressive credit, which I need to hear about this, is working as a cater waiter for Martha Stewart. So I want to hear about that. She does a blog, and she is a lifetime member of the Writers Guild. So Writers Guild of America. And just serves on boards. I mean, she's just seriously so cool. She has 4 amazing releases this year, which we're going to get into. And I am just really excited to welcome to our live stream Ellen Byron. So let me bring her on right now.
Hey,
There we
I just
go.
need to.
Hello.
I've been nominated for 2 Anthonys, but I haven't won. But I did win 2 Agatha Awards and 4 Lefties for Best Humorous Mysteries from the Left Coast Crime Convention.
That's
So,
awesome.
and I had 2. Actually, you reminded me. I actually had 3 releases this year, if you count. I'm in a short story collection called, excuse me, Hollywood Kills, which is short stories all written by people who are connected, have a job or connected some way to the entertainment industry. And it's actually also a fundraiser for fire relief. All the proceeds go to the
Oh,
California Community Foundation's Wildfire Recovery Fund.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah, I want
Yeah.
to get into
Thanks.
that. I want to get into your releases and stuff. But I guess I just want to say I'm so happy that you're here.
Well,
Thank you
thank you
for
for
making
having me. I'm thrilled to be
time.
here.
It's so fun. And so where are you joining us from tonight?
I live in Studio City. I'm originally from New York, but I've lived in California long enough now that I'm a Californian. I live in Studio City, which is a section of Los Angeles.
Okay, great,
So,
great.
yeah. So
Well, good. And what's in your cozy mug? Are you drinking any tea or coffee or
I
what do you got?
forgot. I realized as I saw you sipping, I don't have a beverage. I'm gonna
I
have to like
know.
tough it out and then get a glass of water when this is over. So,
Mm,
I totally forgot. So,
okay. All right. Well, okay. So when I was going over all the things that you've done, you've written for TV, for stage, and now you're writing best-selling cozy mysteries. So how did your path as a storyteller kind of evolve? Tell us about that.
well, I got a theater degree from Tulane University, and I decided started out like my goal was to be an actress, and it just quickly changed into writing for theater. And I did do improv well for years concurrently with writing, and it was actually great because I think it gave me a lot of skills that came in handy working in a writer's room, which is very collaborative, and you have to be able to give up your darlings, not kill them necessarily, but give them up, hand them over to the showrunner and to the staff. And so I started writing plays, and then to support myself, I was writing magazine articles. And oh, my daughter just showed up with oh, thank you. Thanks, sweetie. She just showed up with a oh! Sorry, can you pick that up, honey? Sorry. I brought you wine. Okay, so sidebar. Thank you, honey. So I love advent calendars. They're my jam. And before like I was into them before they became like a thing. And
Yeah.
so I have like, and I've like evolved into to the kind of advent calendars I like, which now I kind of lean towards cheese, chocolate, and wine. Because
Yeah.
a lot of those, the other ones like I love tea. I'm a big tea drinker, but I like specific teas. So I know if I get one of those, there are going to be 1,000 teas I don't like, and it's a
Yeah.
waste of time and money. Anyway, so my daughter bought me a glass of water. Thanks, sweetheart. Hold on. But she also bought me one of the things I got was this wine called Vine Box or something, and they came, it's like test tubes.
Oh,
And so it's such an odd shape. I mean, the wines are like, high end. They're supposed to be very, fancy and high end, but like it looks like it's impossible. So it just rolled off the table when she brought it to me. So I'll just put that there and hope it doesn't roll off again. Okay, back to live. It's live. So anyway, I was doing freelance magazine writing to support myself, and then I hit a point with my plays where I'll remember very clearly, I was getting notes from yet another workshop production, and I was sitting there in my New York apartment, my fourth floor walk up, going, boy, if I'm going to be giving these notes, someone should pay me to take them. And that's when I decided to make the transition into television. And that was a very tough decision because it meant moving from New York. And, I'm a native New Yorker. My dream from childhood was to live in Manhattan. And I was living that dream, and I loved my New York life. I loved it. And, I did not love Los Angeles. In fact, my very first trip, I was 19 and I couldn't even rent a car. And I told the story something before that I was like, my dad said, you have to go and visit California. And my great aunt and uncle had moved out from Brooklyn to Modesto, of all transitions, because he was in the food business and he was running a tomato packing plant. So I visited them and then went down to Los Angeles, but I couldn't rent a car. And so I was like, I went for a walk. My dad booked me at a place where he had stayed on Sunset Boulevard. And I went for a walk and I walked into Beverly Hills and a police car pulled me over because they thought I was a teenage prostitute. So I did not have a great feeling about LA, but during the 80s, I would have to come out and do interviews for celebrities and stuff. And so I was like, I got to do it. So I pulled the trigger and moved out here in 1990 and then got into, I was writing by myself, spec scripts, and then I got a TV writing partner. And so that's, when our career kind of, and I did not everything, but we did, most of the work was with a TV partner. And then what happened is that comedy is much more ageist than drama. And I always say there's a bit of a reason for that, in that humor evolves. So what made us laugh even 10 years ago, doesn't make us laugh now necessarily, and especially in the current times, so much of humor is meme related. And if you don't know what's going on and you're not in on it, you can't make jokes about it. And so your humor isn't current. So there is you have to keep, but even aside from that, it's really, they gravitate towards younger people. And I always say, as I got older and remained female, the jobs came less. So I finally, I decided to transition, and, timing wise, I got to the point where I could financially, take my pension early or whatever. And I started writing mysteries, and I wrote what I loved, which was, and I didn't even know I was writing cozies because, I was early. I started reading Agatha Christie when I was 14. And so, she was kind of my North Star. And, but the first thing I wrote was actually rather jaded, and it won a Malice grant, William F. Teague Malice Domestic Grant. Malice Domestic is a convention for traditional and cozy authors, and it's really very cool. They had this grant for unpublished writers, and it was one of the two winners. That's what kicked off my career, but that particular manuscript never sold. And in retrospect, I understood why, because it was a little too, it really wasn't, it was cozy in that it had an amateur sleuth and, but it was a little too jaded. It was dark. It was set in Los Angeles at a very, prestigious public school. So anyway, but then while that was out on submission, I wrote the first book that became the Plantation Shutters, which became the first book in my Cajun Country Mystery series. So that was a long answer.
That's great. That is so cool. So, okay. So, how does writing sitcoms or, comedy
Mhm.
compare to writing cozies? I mean, does the comedy background kind of influence your
Oh,
work?
well, absolutely, because I'm always looking for where to add humor, but not at the sacrifice of emotion or plot, because you need all those things. With sitcoms, there's very little emphasis on emotion. I mean, it's the whole goal is to make people laugh, and
Right,
that's
right.
fine. I have no problem with that at all. But with these books, and especially if you write series, you're creating. I developed a term. I call it immersive. It's an immersive experience. I want readers to have to feel like they are where my series, they are in New Orleans or in Gold Rush country or in Cajun country or New York and Astoria. And, these people could be their friends. There's just, I want people, I'm sorry, I have all this stuff behind me and behind me. I just realized when I went like that, you could see it. So I was trying
No,
to get rid of
oh,
it. I hide it behind me. But that being said, I also love to make people laugh. I think laughter is undervalued and underrated in our society. It's like, like when you look at the Oscars or anything, it's like, oh, if it's a comedy, it's not as good in some level, which is really, I always say, like, why do we give more weight to what gives us pain than what gives us pleasure? Because laughter is pleasure and it's
right,
healing.
right. It
It's a
is.
very
It is.
important thing in life. And it's interesting because even in the mystery community, like for a funny book to get a nomination for one of the categories at the three main conventions, which are Malice, BoucherCon, and Left Coast Crime, there has to be not at Malice. Malice actually cozies will get nominated. I've been the recipient myself. And that's what's really great about it, that they will be up there in the best contemporary not category, along with suspense or, I won over Louise Penny one year. I mean, that was like amazing.
Wow.
And she was great about it, but she doesn't care. She's getting, what does she care? But she was very nice. But so I'm really happy about that. But in the other places, people don't seem to feel like a cozy rates being in the best category. And sometimes there is also historical mysteries are separated in their own category. There's some siloing. But even that being said, um, I wrote one standalone that hasn't sold, and it's based on a family situation, and it's like the least funny thing I wrote. But and I miss and I think part of the reason it hasn't sold is that people have come to expect humor from me, even editors or publishers, and I like doing that. I don't want to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I look, I'll do like what if one thing I do is I always try to find some kind of physicality for within a manuscript, because I mean I think cozy, because I always say that like cozies and traditional mysteries are about what happened, suspense is about what's happening, and thrills are about what might happen. So if it's what happened, a lot is talking about past and stuff. So I will actively look to, if I'm sending my amateur sleuth into a situation, I try to find something that's going to provide humor and make her active at least a couple of times, so she's not just talking.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
great. That's good. Okay. All right. So you released. Now you said it was 3. I thought I had 4 in my list,
no,
but
it's actually two. I had Solid Gold Murder, which came out in July 29th, and then Crescent City Christmas Chaos, which
okay.
just came out on November 11th, no, November 4th. And then in between on September 2nd, the short story collection that I'm part of did
Okay.
come out.
Okay.
So
What about the recipe book though? I thought there was a recipe one that came.
no, my vintage cookbook mysteries are inspired by my own hobby of collecting vintage cookbooks, and so they all have recipes in them that I've adapted for my own
Oh,
collection. And of
wow.
course, the great irony is that I am not a cook. My daughter is a fabulous cook. She's the family chef. I love to bake. I have just made some cookies today for the holiday.
Oh, that's
But
good.
I'm always on a diet, so I can I can never indulge it as much as I'd like to.
One little small one, right?
Yeah, I do
Okay,
it.
so tell us the Martha Stewart story. What's that
Oh,
about?
Well, so after college, I was your basic New York aspiring performer, and I think I was starting to do improv, and I met an actor who said, "Oh, I'm doing these part-time, catering gigs with this caterer who's based up in Connecticut. If you're interested." I was like, "Yeah, I know Connecticut well. My parents actually had a cottage in northwestern Connecticut for decades, so but this was more Westport is on the shore more, and so somehow they needed people. So I got jobbed in, and I laughed because I the very first, I just, so anyway, so I cater waitered, and people say, well, what is that? Well, it's when you're both helping to cater and you're also waiting. And so I'd work in the kitchen and help assemble the food, especially for appetizers, and then serve it, either passing hors d'oeuvres or occasionally manning a buffet station, or even I may have once or twice done a sit down, which those were the most terrifying. So I did that off and on for a few years. And then, after it's started, one day this book arrived at the door of my fourth floor walk up, and it was a copy of Entertaining, her very first book, and with a thank you note. And there I was in the credits, and there at page 29, I'm sitting in the
Ooh, I
Hugo
have it. I
kitchen.
have it. I will go look.
If you have one of the early editions, because they
Okay.
did an in-between edition, and I'll tell you, I'll get to this in a minute. And that really actually, I still use things I learned from Martha. I mean, especially in the catering hall mysteries. I remember she, in the first book, Mia, the protagonist, has to do an offsite event. And I'm like, oh, how did we get stuff from Connecticut down to the city? And so I, call back my memory cells and remembered. And but this is very interesting. They just this year, the same day Crescent City Chaos came out, they re-released Entertaining, and the original edition, because it suddenly became very popular on TikTok.
Mhm.
And I actually did a little TikTok where I showed the book and showed my picture. And it was like, all my other the few TikToks I've done, like, but that one, wee. So, they did a podcast where they brought together people who were somehow involved with that first book. And I was only peripherally, and it was so interesting because, Martha, so I was the only one who was like on the computer. Everyone else was in person, but they were shooting it up in Westport, and I couldn't get there in time. And I think also the shutdown was on, and my daughter's anyway. So I was like, max headroom. I was on a computer, but I was so funny because at one point Martha was going through it, and I'm in it twice. There's one picture of me that's a side profile, and I'm wearing glasses. I guess I had to give up wearing contacts, but I used to wear contacts. I guess something was wrong with them or whatever. And Martha goes, "Oh, there you are, Ellen. You're assembling. You're making an appetizer." And it was hard because I couldn't really hear what was going on and stuff, so I couldn't communicate a lot. But it was the first time I interviewed Martha when I was doing the My First Job column for Glamour magazine, but that was way back when. But yeah, it was like, it was so funny to get to have that. And it's, I learned a lot from that. And I always say that it's kind of a tongue in cheek that, that's my claim to fame. But on the other hand, my Italian, I'm half Italian, and, Nonna was straight, my mom was 3 when she came over. So Nonna, really didn't speak English that well. And she worked as she crocheted, and, she was a member of ILGW, and very, very blue, collar immigrant. And so my play, she didn't know what to do with my plays or even my magazine articles, but that picture of me looking very downstairs in my little catering waitress outfit, she loved that.
Yeah. Working hard. Yeah, that's so fun. Well, it gave you some great fodder for your books, which is,
yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, well, tell us a little bit about Crescent City Christmas, since that's kind of the new release right now. So tell us about it.
Crescent City Christmas Chaos is the 4th book in my Vintage Cookbook mystery series. And my protagonist, Ricky, has kind of she's 28, but she's a widow. And she lived in Los Angeles. What happened is she was born in New Orleans, a charity hospital, but she was abandoned at birth by her teen mom, who disappeared. And her NICU nurse fell in love with her and ended up adopting her. And then when she was about 7 or 8, she her mother Josepha got married to a grip who was in town, Luis, who was in town working on a movie, and then they all moved to Los Angeles. And now Ricky impulsively married in her mid-20s this actor who was struggling, but then he found fame as a YouTuber doing stupid stuff, and they were separated because it was just she knew it was a bad move, and he died doing a stupid stunt. And so she ends up being like, in this bad position where she's actually a widow, even though she was getting divorced. And also the other thing that happens is that she was, her job was managing the first edition collection for a billionaire who turned out was running a Ponzi scheme. Because one of my fascinations is with the whole Madoff situation.
Oh, sure.
Because I knew one of the moms here at school, her parents who were supposed to retire and move out here lost all their money from the Madoff thing. So, so I kind of factor that in anyway. So Ricky has moved back to the town of her birth to see if she can find out more about, if maybe proximity will help her discover her, she's doing the websites and stuff, like Ancestry, but, being in New Orleans might help her find her birth mom, something that her parents really support. Anyway, so it's around Christmas, and Joseph and Luis have come to surprise her and stay for the holidays. And there's a woman from the past who Josepha thought was dead, but it turned out that the obituary that was for a woman with the same name, and she's still alive. And she has something on Josepha, and Josepha is Black. She's African American. So to adopt this white child as an infant, this woman was somehow involved in that. And so when this woman dies, Ricky, suddenly her parents are prime suspects. So she has to help clear their names. And meanwhile, there are these robberies going on. In New Orleans, there's this famous Christmas character called Mr. Bingle, who's like a snowman with an ice cream cone hat. I always thought he was creepy looking. And so I was going to do it like this robber is dressing as Mr. Bingle. And then a friend said, well, you could kind of make, that might be libelous because I think someone owns the copyright. So I created a takeoff of him, a parody of him called Mr. Bongo. And the thing about Louisiana and New Orleans is that it's like 100% that would happen. That it's like Bad Santa. So someone created like a Bad Santa version of Mr. Bingle, and now this robber is dressing it. So that's going on simultaneous. So there's hilarious. A lot going on.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So Mr. Bongle, who's like the kind of a, so it makes me laugh because I just know New Orleans well enough to know that 100% that there could have been a Mr. Bongle and he would have been completely embraced by the city. And it's Christmas in New Orleans, and I try to lean into that. Although one reviewer did say there's not a lot of Christmas here. I'm like, well, I think there's plenty of Christmas, but it's not. I mean, but there's a lot going on. Like I said, I like my mysteries. I like them to be active. I don't just want people to go and just be sitting around a coffee. There are plenty of sitting around and talking because that's part of the genre. But every so often, I want to get. Oh, and so Ricky has to pretend sometime, they're trying to figure out what's going on in the street where this woman lived, which is a very upscale street in New Orleans where there are a lot of secrets. And one of the people who lives there is this old lady who's totally racist. So, and that was a really fun scene to write, I have to say.
So you lived in New York and now you live in LA. What draws you to these Southern kind of locales for your book?
You know what? I mean, I went to Tulane, but don't forget that my other series, Solid Gold Murder, the book that came out, is the second of my Golden Motel mysteries, which is set in California's gold rush country in present day. And my protagonist in that is very much me. She's a kind of, I call her recovering sitcom writer who realizes that she's about to turn 40, which her career is practically over. And so she impulsively buys this motel in gold rush country. And that series is, has a lot of humor in it. And I always try to have, it's the present day, but I always try to have an element of the entertainment industry and an element of history. So in Solid Gold Murder, there's she's taken up cartooning her dad is a voice actor, and now he's living up there. So she grew up like going to like, when you had to record episodes, and she cartoons. And so there's an agent who lives up there part time and is trying to sell her cartoons now to, Hollywood for development. So there's that runner going on. But there's also the gold rush, the past informing the present, which a lot of my books have that, kind of what happens in the past informs, what's happening in the present. And so, but what, so I really wanted to go. When I learned there was a college in New Orleans, and it was from someone who was 2 years ahead of me in high school. I was like, oh my God. I was a big Tennessee Williams fan. I love Tennessee Williams. I mean,
Oh,
Glass Menagerie is just one of my favorite, which is ironically set in St. Louis, where my husband is from.
oh,
But and so and I actually, because of financial situation at home, I had to go to state school in New York for a year and a half. But I was determined. In the middle of that sophomore year, I transferred to Tulane, and Newcomb College, which was the women's division, which doesn't exist anymore, only as an institute, sadly. That's
mm,
a result of Hurricane Katrina. But
mm.
and I just became, New Orleans is such a unique. It's hard to, I think people really get how unique it is when you go there. But my daughter ended up going to college there too, and she lived there more than I did, because she
Wow.
stayed through it with COVID and stuff. She got jobs and she stayed and stuff, and so we would go visit her all the time. And it just really speaks to me, because I think it's a city that has a lot of humor to it. I think there's a resilience. It's a city that's is in danger every day of its life. Kind of, it's like our Venice, and we actually had to. I was visiting her when Ida hit, and we had to evacuate, and
Oh,
that was really, seeing people just go, I don't know if I can do this anymore, was just
yeah,
devastating.
yeah.
And because it's such a special place, and then Cajun country just also just spoke to me, and I think, I thought about that, like, why this place I really have no connection to. But I think what I discovered is that, I said my mom is Italian. Well, growing up, we had relatives coming over. There was the World War II broke up the migration. So the people who came before, and then there was this period when people couldn't come, and then they were coming through the mid 60s. So when I was little, I mean, my whole life, I could go to functions, and I would not hear it, I wouldn't hear English. Like,
Mhm.
Italian that was their primary language. That's how they all spoke to each other. So, and I realized that, like, Cajun country is a culture within a culture. I mean, it has its own food, its own music, its own language. You can still go there and hear people speaking Cajun French.
Mm.
And so that's kind of what I grew up with on my mom's side of the family, a culture within a culture. So I
Okay.
think there's a little bit of that connection.
Okay, I can understand that. So now when you say that character in the Golden Motel series is kind of like you, is that Dee that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you based her on kind of
Yes.
on how you would see yourself if you were.
Well, yes, I mean, she's much more ballsy than I am, but I mean, just the fact that she had this, the fact that she was I worked on some Disney shows and it was not a good experience. So the fact she's on this terrible kids show called Duh, and just impulsively does this, and the fact that as she was aging, her career was, and it used to be, and I think they actually upped the age that you could join the career longevity at the Writers Guild at like 40. It was like, that's when, you're starting to head for the barn, as we say in the business.
Mhm.
So she's realizing she's, and she doesn't have like a great credit. That's the other thing in Hollywood. It's like, if you have a Friends or a Frasier credit, you can ride that to the bank. I mean, you can just keep riding that credit. But if you are in a workhorse show, like a show that people loved but didn't have the critical acclaim, Wings was on for 8.5 seasons or more. I mean, it was like and people still love that show. I used to, I would teach sometimes at UCLA Extension. I would bring like clips from shows, and, from my more prestigious ones or whatever, that people love that show, but it didn't have the critical heat. So it didn't become like, it wasn't, so it was, so anyway, so I factor a lot of that in, and a lot of my own experiences, In fact, in I was talking about the runner and the B story in Solid Gold Murder, where the agent wants to sell her stuff. I write specifically to the trope of like, the whole development trope is, it's great, it's a bear, can you make it a squirrel?
Mhm.
And I write to that, but at the end there actually is a legitimate reason why, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I didn't want to like just make it all jokey. It's like, when you think about it, the executives have a point in not wanting it to be a bear.
Mhm.
They're not handling it in the best way, and then she has to go, okay, well, you know what, that does make sense, but it's
Yeah.
not the direction I want to go in, but it does make sense. So I
Mhm.
didn't want to just to be kind of like superficial. I wanted there to be, because I've dealt with so many executives, they're good people. I mean, some of them aren't, some of them are. A lot of
Mhm.
them are. I had some
Yeah.
wonderful, very positive experiences with them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm grateful. Look, if I hadn't had the TV career, and it was ups and downs, there were years where it was like, oh, I don't know how we're going to make it. But I wouldn't be able to do what I do now. And, I'm proud. And I'm proud.
That's good. That's good. So, I mean, in your books, then you're kind of writing the truth, right? I mean, you have
Yes.
the firsthand experience of what it's like. And I can't wait. One of my daughters went to school for theater as well, and
Yeah.
was going to be an actor and did the improv and all that jazz. So she's the one who loves Fairly Odd Parents. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so I am so excited for her to read some of your stuff. I just think
Well,
that's
I think she would really like that series. And the thing that was so much fun, where I loved working on that show, that was really fun to work on, because we didn't write down. It was like, there are every so often we go, well, kids might not get that, but we were never wrote down to them.
Mhm.
So it's a show that parents could sit and watch it, because I would, some of the animated shows, and I would sit and watch with my daughter, and I'm not animated like some of the, I'll say it, some of the Disney Channel shows.
Right, right.
I would sit and watch my daughter and be like, oh, come on. She'd be like, Mom, I'm trying to watch a show here. Go away.
Yeah.
Take your judgment and go away.
Yeah.
And I just, I love writing, each of my series, I really have loved writing, and feel very connected to on some level. Like, the catering hall, Maria Dorica was my late nana's maiden name. They asked me to
Oh.
take a pen name, and I was like,
Oh.
okay. And I did that. And my protagonist there, Mia, she lives where Nana lived in Astoria. She
Oh.
lives
Oh.
literally, she lives upstairs where my uncle and aunt and their 4 kids lived, somehow packed in, and Nana lived downstairs. So in my book, Nana lives downstairs and Mia lives upstairs. So, and she
Oh.
works at one of the catering halls. She works at the catering hall where my husband and I had a reception, because cousins by marriage ran it. We had our New York reception there.
Well, I was going to ask you, you write a lot about strong, kind of smart, funny women. And I was going to ask you how you come up with them. So it sounds like you base them on,
They, you know what, they all have, look, they're all brunette, or they all have, well, no, Mia has bright blue eyes and dark hair. She does not look anything like me. But I think my other 3 characters all have hazel eyes. They all have aspects of me, but they're not all me. I think Dee is probably the closest, although she's way ballsier than I am. I would never have the guts to do or say some of the things she does or says. And it's great to be able to let her do it.
right.
Um, you know, with Ricky in the vintage cookbooks, she is much more hesitant. She's really not a lot like me. In fact, at one point, Valerie Bertinelli was interested in the book, and Bayou Book Thief and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, even though she's not 28, her quality is so perfect. And it really, at the end of the day, it's so much more about that. Like
Mhm.
everything, if you have the right performer and she has that quality, and she'd be so perfect as Ricky, so what? You just adjust. I mean, you
Right.
can, no one's, who cares?
Mhm.
So I think, and in the beginning of the series, she's a little more California, she's a little more woo-woo, like she has affirmations. I do have my one affirmation that was given to me, and I love this. I interviewed Shirley MacLaine once, and I told her I was afraid of flying, and I had to go back and forth a lot, between New York and California. And she said, I'm going to give you an affirmation. When you feel like, or mantra, whatever, when you feel that fear coming on, just close your eyes and say to yourself, I'm having a safe, uneventful journey. And it was like the best gift I've ever gotten in my life, because what I found is you can apply that to everything.
Hmm.
I mean, on the freeway, every day, I don't think a day goes by when I don't tell myself that. When you're about to get on a Zoom, it's like, because journey is such an all-encompassing word. So,
Mm.
but I gave that aspect to Ricky, where she has like affirmations. And, in the first book in the series, she uses the word awesome a lot and people tease her about it. A lot of it is, so a lot of these protagonists are just, there might be a hint of me, but then they're just in my head. I don't see myself as that character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's switch over to the vintage cookbook mysteries. Okay, so because that's kind of a fun concept. What
Yeah.
kind of sparked the idea of building a series around old cookbooks
I
and
collect them.
okay, all right.
I started with a few, and now I have like 100. I can't even count how many I have, because I can't. Now it's become like an addiction.
Where do you
I
get
can't go
them?
to
Where do you find them?
library sales. Now people will give them to me. They're like, "Oh, I've had this for years, but I'm not doing anything. But you like it," and I can't say no. And the great irony of this, and I wrote this. I gave this character trait to Ricky, is that I'm not a cook. My daughter is a great, like I was saying, I'm not a great cook, but and this the books, I take recipes from the cookbooks and adapt them, because and because I feel like you can't do a vintage cookbook mystery series and not have recipes. And
Mhm.
it's so cool to find them and use, and it's kind of like being a detective a little bit, because if you're adapting a recipe from a 1930s cookbook, well, ovens were different then. Ingredients don't exist that did. There was some jam recently that was in a recipe, and I'd never heard of it. And I looked it up, and it's some jam from the Lorraine region of France. And I remember at one point, Finn and Hattie was in a couple of recipes. I'm like, what is that? It's some, it's just, and that's my fascination with them, is they're so evocative. It's like anthropology or sociology, or maybe both. They're very evocative of their time period. I mean, the cookbooks from the 1930s are budget cookbooks because the Depression was going on. 1950s, the working woman's cookbook, because women were starting, to work towards the end of the 50s.
Mhm.
One of my favorites is so cool. I found at our library sale the photoplay cookbook. And by the way, cookbook for many years was spelled as two words. So I will get corrected on that when I do it. But I'm like, I have to put like sick, because SIC, because that is how it is in the title. The photoplay cookbook of the stars from, 1920s.
Okay.
And it was 1928, which was, of course, the pivotal year from transition from silent to talkies. And then I love Ford put out my very first vintage cookbook was the Ford Treasury of Famous Eating Places. And it came out in 1950, and it's beautiful. It's like yellow, and it's got this fabulous artwork. And that's another thing that I love, is the artwork and how it's evocative of the period of the time. And it was a way of, encouraging people to drive and to take driving vacations, to go to these cities so you could eat there. And then, I mean, so I just become really fascinated.
That's very cool. That's really cool. Where do you keep all the cookbooks?
Everywhere. They're
Yeah.
all over. I've filled my I have to condense. Sometimes what I do is I specifically buy them and use them in, when you go to these conventions, there are silent auction donations. So
Oh,
I'll do a vintage cookbook, like it'll have the first two books in my series, and then I'll include 3 or 4 vintage cookbooks along
oh,
with
what a
some,
cool idea.
related. Yeah. So I give them
I love
away,
that.
and I've given them away as fate. Like I did a Poison Pen is a great mystery bookstore in Arizona, and John Charles, who runs the events, invited me to talk to their cookbook club. So we did. It was great because I flew to Phoenix in the morning, and we did. The women brought food, made recipes from vintage cookbooks from their own past, so there was food there, and then I wrapped 20 cookbooks, and people like hand them out as gifts. So everyone got like a vintage cookbook to take home. It
Oh,
weeded out some of my collection, but now I've got a big stack because I can't, I keep buying them to give away. So I have to stop. I have to stop.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's funny how those collections,
I know. I
I know,
know.
can be a problem. So, okay. So I had another question on that.
Yes.
I want to go back to the Crescent City Christmas chaos. Okay. So did any of your kind of favorite holiday traditions make their way into the book at all? Anything from
You
your
know
past?
what? Not really. It was more about Christmas in New Orleans.
Okay.
And so, but there are things like I love outdoor decorations, so I make sure that I describe some of the outdoor decorations. I needle my other hobby besides collecting cookbooks that I don't cook from is except for the book series, except for the series, is needlepoint. So I have dozens of 2 dozen ornaments that I've needle pointed, or going back to when I was a teenager. I also did
Oh.
other stuff then, and I have, so I love decorating the tree. I have one thing that's become a tradition over the last 5 or so years is that three mom friends from the neighborhood and we go out and we do what I call the Christmas crawl, where I'll find out decorations around the city, like homes that are really done up, in a big way. And so we drive to all these homes and then we, stop for a bite to eat and a drink. So, and I
Oh.
love doing that. So we used to, when my parents, oops, you can see behind me again. My parents have both passed away now, but when they were coming out here, just my dad, there's one house that was it had a website. It was just great. And he so much fun going there. He just loved it. He was like a kid. So, so those are a couple. And now my daughter has added a new tradition, which is making gumbo for Christmas Day. So
Well,
Christmas Day gumbo.
that was going to be one of my questions,
Ah!
actually. So I was going to ask you in a kind of some rapid fire, gumbo or beignets or
Oh,
beignet.
gumbo.
How do you say that?
Beignet.
Yeah, beignet. Gumbo would be your choice?
Absolutely.
Okay. And is it spicy?
No,
Your
I don't
gumbo?
like spicy.
Okay. Because my brother-in-law makes it and it's very spicy. So
No. And you know what? This is a misnomer, and you really that goes back to Paul Prudhomme and blackened redfish. And the thing is, New Orleans cooks will tell you it's not about being spicy, it's about being flavorful. And it's very rare. I never really, I don't think I've ever had a spicy gumbo. It's
you know what?
not
I'm
a
sorry, I misspoke. It's jambalaya that he makes.
jambalaya, yes.
That's what he makes.
Jambalaya, yes, is more likely to have some heat. People will make it with some heat, but I just want to taste the flavors.
Yeah.
My dad was one of those people who loved spicy stuff, and he would sit there gasping for air and his dripping sweat. And my husband would say, I don't understand how this is a positive experience for you.
That's so funny. Okay. What's your favorite classic holiday movie?
You know what? I would have said years ago, I would have said White Christmas, but it's actually my favorite that I watch usually by myself every year now is the 1951 Christmas Carol with Alistair Sim.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one. It's just old timey, but it was just so on point for that book.
Yeah, it was. Yep. Okay.
And I do love White Christmas, although as I've gotten older now, the fact they shot it on a sound stage and you can kind of hear the echoes sometimes is, so, and some of those songs are not Irving Berlin's best.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Real tree or artificial?
Artificial, for the environment, we thought, but we've had the same tree for ever. And I got a rotating tree stand because I'd seen one at someone's house once and fell in love with it. And theirs was dated back. It was generations old. But it only works now with an artificial tree. You can't use a real tree in it. And so we've had the same tree and all the lights are have kind of died. So we got something from, actually, I think it was Amazon, where you could just hang it over the top of the tree and 5 strands of lights come down. So, but I'll always miss the fabulous scent of a real tree.
I know, but the mess is.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What's one retro recipe that you do actually make?
Oh, I actually, I think it was French Quarter Fright Night where you find it. I said, I can't even remember. I came across a recipe for pumpkin chiffon pie. And I was very interested because I feel, I'm not sure. I think the cookbook, the chiffons are very 50s and 60s and chiffon cakes and stuff. So I made the pumpkin chiffon pie and it's really good. It's almost like a mousse. It really is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like a pumpkin mousse in a pie shell. And I always use a graham. I use it when I even make a regular pumpkin pie. I use a graham cracker crust because I think that's much more flavor. it just works, I think, really well with pumpkin.
Oh, I'm
Um,
gonna try that sometime.
yeah,
Okay.
because a lot of times you just leave the crust. It's not gonna
Right.
like I can't make a crust to save my life, and I just don't think store-boughts. But the graham cracker is like having a cookie with
Yeah,
your
exactly. That's awesome.
yeah. So
Well, so okay, so can you give us any sneak peeks about what's coming next for you?
yes, I can. In 2026, I have two more books coming out, and one is the third book in the Golden Motel Mysteries, and it's called All Aboard for Murder, and it's Halloween and Found Gold and Gold's Gone. And I went up to research. I spent Halloween in that time period at the places Columbia State Historic Park, which is the inspiration for Gold's Gone, and I did a paranormal tour, and we did this little train tour, the train trip that we'd done before the Sugar Pine narrow gauge railroad, a former logging train that's now like a tourist thing. We did that. They did a Halloween one, and all of that gets written into the book. So it's really fun. And then also A Murderous Mardi Gras is the fifth vintage cookbook. And again, in February, we went to New Orleans, not Mardi Gras weekend, the weekend before, and when there were still a ton of parades, because people don't realize that there are parades going from the Epiphany through Mardi Gras. It's carnival season in New Orleans.
Right.
And I did a walking parade and a float parade and another float parade I didn't get to do because it ran out, but I got to go to parties. And so I write all that into that book. It's Mardi Gras, New Orleans.
Okay,
A
fun.
very
And
murderous Mardi
when
Gras.
are these coming out? What do you think?
They're both coming out in the summer. I think I don't have my calendar, but whatever the last Tuesday in July, All Aboard for Murder will be out, and then I think the last Tuesday in August, Mardi Gras Murder. Unfortunately, it's coming out like not in conjunction with Mardi Gras, but the paperback will come out 6 months later, and that will be closer to Mardi Gras.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It'll give you time to kind of promote it, and that'll be
Yes,
good.
exactly.
Well, all right. So if you were going to shift gears and write in a new genre just for fun, what would you try?
I I don't know. I don't know if I really. I mean, I did write this one If I could write, I wish I could write something like a Romancing the Stone. My friend Wendell Thomas wrote a great series that was very similar to that. I would love to write kind of a caper, like a mystery caper, like light. I'm not good at writing romance; it's not my thing. But a fun, if there's a little bit of that. One of my favorite movies is the movie Charade.
Mhm.
It's such a great movie, and it's such a great caper with just twists and twists and twists. So I'd love to write something like a book that was like that,
Twisty. Okay.
but still funny. I think, the suspense I wrote is really good, but I miss the humor in it, and so
Mhm.
I wanted to have suspense. I wanted to be like twisty, suspensey, but also funny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's the best way for us to support your books and stay connected to
Oh,
you?
sign up for my newsletter.
Okay.
It's you can sign up on my website, and it goes out once a month, and I do a lot of giveaways. Actually, right now, I'm doing, and I've shared it on my Facebook page, and it's also on my Instagram. I've shared it everywhere. I'm doing Katrina McPherson and she writes a motel series set in California, the Last Ditch Motels. And this past Friday, December 12th, was the 100th anniversary of the motel. And the
Oh,
first motel opened in San Luis Obispo on December 12th, 1925. So we're doing a giveaway that's really fun. And if you go to my author page on Facebook, and also I think it's on my personal page, I shared the link to the newsletter that went out with the contest in it, and I'll notify people privately on Friday if they won. There's some fun gifts for it, and then I do try to do little giveaways of some sort, not every month, but quite frequently, and a little about my personal life where I can. And also you can follow me on Instagram, but also BookBub and Amazon and Goodreads. All of those are really important now because, they're very important because of these algorithms.
mhm.
It's almost more important to follow me there than at like Facebook or Instagram and stuff. Although you'll have more fun if you follow me
You
at those
mean to
places.
follow you on Amazon or BookBub, you mean?
Yes, Amazon,
Amazon?
BookBub,
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
yes.
So just your website is the ellenbyron.com, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right. And let's see
Oh,
here.
one other thing I'll say is that if you sign up for my newsletter, you get the link, and you should get a letter, get a thank you that has a link to my secret downloads page. And I have
Oh,
some recipes on that, and also like versions of like some of the stuff that I do as giveaways for swag, that like a postcard with recipes on it. So, and a short story. So
yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you.
thank
Well, let's see
you.
here. We've got, yep, probably I said 45 minutes, so I'm a little over, but it was such a blast. Thank you so much for
Thank you
sharing your
so much.
process and your humor. It was great to see you.
I
And
really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And to anyone who sees this, and to you, have a fabulous holiday.
yeah, thank you. And I want to just say hi quick to some Vanessa, hello, and Tina, hello. Thank you for joining us and commenting. They just said hi and where they're
Oh,
from, Kansas.
lovely.
And let's see, Tina, I forgot where you are. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's really nice that they would join us. And don't forget, Reader Crate is available, and I do have a couple left, and they're going to be shipping out January 2nd. And Ellen has included some gifts in there for our Reader Crate members. So that's really fun too.
Great.
Yay. All right.
Yay.
Well, it was so wonderful, Ellen. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank
Okay.
you for finding me.
Yeah, it was great.
Have
All
a
right,
great
everyone. Thank
holiday.
you for joining us.
Take
Okay.
care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.